Today, we're diving into something pretty amazing. It's like a health mystery that's been hiding in plain sight for over 70 years, tucked away in the history books of post-war Britain. So get this. What if I told you that a government policy, something from way back, like over 70 years ago, might be secretly protecting people's hearts today? I know, it sounds a little wild, right? Kind of like something out of a sci-fi movie. But the thing is, the data says it just might be true. So to really get to the bottom of this, we need to jump in a time machine. We're heading back to post-war Britain, a time of some serious belt-tightening that, as it turns out, had this incredible, unexpected upside for people's health. So right after World War II, the UK rolled out this huge food rationing program. And look, the goal here wasn't about making people healthier, not at all. It was just about making sure everyone got a fair share of food and that nothing ran out. But a side effect of this was that they really clamped down on things like sugar and sweets. And that created this really unique situation, especially for the very young. And this is where it gets super interesting for scientists. This whole situation created what they call a natural experiment. I mean, think about it. You could never ethically design a study today where you're like, hey, let's put these babies on a restricted diet and check back in 60 years to see how their hearts are doing. No way! But in this case, history kind of ran the experiment for them. It's this incredibly rare, perfect setup for research. So what was the secret sauce here? What made this whole accidental experiment so powerful? Well, it all came down to timing. Seriously, timing was everything. Okay, so picture this. The magic date is September 1953. That's the day sugar rationing officially stops. And bam, almost overnight, the amount of sugar people in the UK were eating nearly doubled. Just like that. So you have this really sharp dividing line, right? Babies born before that date grew up with very little sugar. Babies born after that date, not so much. And that one simple fact, that's the key to this entire incredible study. And it's not just that it happened, but when it happened. This whole sugar restriction thing was going on during what scientists call the first 1,000 days. That's the supercritical window from when you're conceived until you're about 2 years old. It's a time when your body is basically being programmed, and the nutrition you get then can set the stage for your health, especially your heart, for your entire life. Okay, so the stage is set, right? We have this amazing historical event, but how on earth did scientists today connect the dots across a 70-year gap? How did they link what a baby ate in the 1950s to how healthy their heart is now? Well, the way they did it was actually pretty brilliant and surprisingly simple. They tapped into this massive health database called the UK Biobank and found over 63,000 people who were born right in that sweet spot between 1951 and 1956. And here's the clever part. Just by knowing their exact birthday, they could figure out if their first 1,000 days happened during rationing, the low sugar period, or after rationing, the high sugar period. After that, all they had to do was look at their medical records from today and see if there was a difference. And what they found, well, it was pretty mind-blowing. The results pointed to this incredibly powerful, lifelong protective shield. Okay, get ready for these numbers because they are staggering. For the people who got the full dose of rationing, while they were in the womb and for their first couple of years, their risk of having a heart attack later in life was down by 25%, a full quarter. And it didn't stop there. For strokes, the risk dropped by an even more dramatic 31% compared to the kids born right after rationing ended. The benefits just kept coming. They also found a 26% lower risk for heart failure. I mean, these aren't tiny little fluctuations. This is a massive, life-changing health advantage, all seemingly linked back to that early life diet. And what's really cool is that it wasn't just an on or off switch. It was more like a dimmer. The science showed a clear dose-response effect. Basically, the more months you spent under sugar rationing during that critical early window, the more protected your heart was as an adult. More restriction, more protection. Simple as that. Okay, so the big question is, why? How in the world does eating less sugar as a baby translate to a healthier heart 60 years down the road? What's the actual connection? Well, the researchers started digging into the biology to find out. So it turns out it's not a straight line from less sugar for baby to healthy heart for adult. There's some important steps in between. A huge piece of the puzzle was that the people from the rationing group were way less likely to develop diabetes or high blood pressure as adults. And since we know those two things are massive drivers of heart disease, they accounted for about a third of the protective effect we saw. So less sugar early on meant less diabetes and hypertension later, which in turn meant healthier hearts. And interestingly, things like birth weight, they hardly played a role at all. And you could actually see the difference in their hearts. When they put people in MRI machines, they found that the hearts of the ration group were just working a little bit better. They had a higher ejection fraction, which is just a fancy way of saying their hearts were more efficient pumps, pushing out more blood with every single beat. It's like their hearts were built stronger and more robust, right from the very start.
Okay, so this has been a really cool trip back in time, a fascinating piece of historical detective work. But what does it all mean for us, right here, right now? That's the real million-dollar question. And this is the part that might blow your mind. That rationing policy from the 1940s and 50s, by pure accident, it almost perfectly matches what nutrition experts are telling us to do today. You know, that modern guideline that says no added sugars for kids under 2? That's exactly what was happening back then out of necessity. It's like they stumbled onto the perfect formula 70 years early.
So let's just wrap this up. What this incredible study shows us is that cutting way back on sugar during those first 1,000 days of life is linked to a huge, measurable drop in the risk for things like heart attacks and strokes down the line. And it seems to do this in 2 ways, by helping to prevent other diseases like diabetes and by literally building a stronger, more efficient heart from day 1.
It's a profound finding, right? It takes this old story from the history books and turns it into a super important lesson for us today. And it really leaves you with one big, important question to think about. If we now know our first 1,000 days literally build the hearts we'll have for the rest of our lives, what does that mean for how we approach nutrition for the next generation?